My disclaimer. My videos don't necessarily promote one religion. My views and opinions aren't meant to change the minds, opinions, or beliefs of others. Watch with an open mind. Before we take a dive into the next lesson, Psalm 73, we must take a look at who is Asaph in the Bible. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to explore the intriguing figure of Asaph in the Bible. Who is Asaph and why is he significant in the biblical narrative? Let's find out. Asaph is mentioned in the Old Testament in the book of Psalms. He was a Levite, a member of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and was appointed by King David to be a chief musician in the tabernacle worship. Asaph is credited with writing several of the Psalms found in the Bible, including Psalm 50 and Psalm 73:83. His contributions to the biblical text are deeply poetic and spiritually rich, reflecting a deep connection with God and a heart full of praise and worship. Asaph's writings often express themes of God's justice, his sovereignty, and the importance of worshiping him with sincerity and humility. His psalms are a valuable part of the Bible, offering timeless truths and inspiration for believers throughout the ages. Asaph's writings often express themes of God's justice, his sovereignty, and the importance of worshiping him with sincerity and humility. His psalms are a valuable part of the Bible, offering timeless truths and inspiration for believers throughout the ages. Asaph's legacy as a musician and a writer in the Bible serves as a reminder of the power of worship and the importance of expressing our hearts to God through music and poetry. His work continues to resonate with readers and worshipers today, showing that the messages of faith and devotion are truly timeless. So there you have it. Asaph's role in the Bible is one of great significance, both in the history of Israel and in the spiritual lives of believers. His writings continue to inspire and uplift, reminding us of the power of worship and the enduring nature of God's love. Thank you for joining us today as we explore this fascinating figure of faith. Until next time, take care and God bless. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's video presentation. Today we will be exploring the profound message of Psalm of Asaph, wrestling with the prosperity of the wicked, specifically focusing on Psalm 73. Join me as we uncover the deep wisdom contained within this enchanting psalm. As we delve into the words penned by the psalmist Asaph, we find ourselves wrestling with a common dilemma that continues to trouble many throughout the ages. The question of why the wicked often prosper while the righteous suffer has long been a source of confusion and frustration for believers. In the initial verses of Psalm 73, we witness Asaph admitting his struggles and wrestling with doubt. He confesses his envy at the prosperity of the wicked, their careless lifestyle, and how they seem to escape the troubles faced by the righteous. These feelings of discontentment may resonate with those who have ever questioned the fairness of life's circumstances. Asaph's journey of understanding takes a turn when he chooses to draw near to God. By entering into the sanctuary of God, he gains a fresh perspective and gains spiritual clarity. In verses 17 to 19, we witness a transformation as his understanding is enlightened, and he begins to see the ultimate fate of the wicked. Let's pause to reflect on these verses. So until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I discerned their end. Truly you set them in slippery places, you make them fall to ruin. How they are destroyed in a moment, swept away utterly by terrors. Asaph's newfound clarity reveals an essential truth. True wealth lies not in material possessions, but in having a close relationship with God. As we progress through the psalm, he acknowledges that the fortunes of the wicked are transitory, mere illusions that vanish like a dream. However, the enduring presence of God is the ultimate source of joy and strength for the righteous. In conclusion, Psalm 73 guides us to confront our doubts and wrestles with the apparent prosperity of the wicked. Through Asaph's introspection, we learn the significance of seeking God's presence and the importance of trusting in his sovereignty. In the end, this psalm inspires us to focus on the eternal rather than the temporal, recognizing that true prosperity comes from a deep and unwavering faith in God. Outline 1. The premise, faith but confusion 1-3. 2. Asaph is astounded by the success of the wicked 4-15. 3. The wicked will face judgment 16-22. 4. God gives the believer strength 23-28. Verse 1:3-73. Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone, my steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Discussion questions. 1. What foundational belief do we see Asaph holds in verse 1? 2. In what way had Asaph almost stumbled? 3. What confusion and doubt did he face as he looked at the world around him? Do we see similar cases of the wicked prospering now? How can this be disturbing to our faith? Have you ever faced doubt or confusion when people more wicked than you are more successful in some area? 1. Asaph believes in God. From verse 1 we see that Asaph, the writer of this psalm, is a firm believer. He is not writing as someone who is hostile to the Lord or an agnostic. He knows all the history of what God has done for Israel, and he believes it. As we move forward in the psalm, it is important to know that Asaph is a sincere believer who has some struggles, not an unbeliever who cannot bring himself to accept God's plan. 2. Asaph still had moments of doubt and confusion trying to understand what was happening in the world around him. In verse 2, we get a glimpse of the struggles of Asaph. His feet came close to stumbling and his steps almost slipped. Here we learn a few important lessons about believers. A. Real believers can have real doubts or struggles. Followers of God are not robots. We have real emotions. There are ups and downs in our spiritual lives. Sometimes our faith is stronger and sometimes it is weaker. There are times when we look at the world and have zero interest in worldly or material things compared to following after God. Other times those same things hold an attraction or allure for us. There are times of strength and times of weakness. Application. Knowing this, we should encourage other believers in their times of struggle or doubt, rather than judge them. It may not be helpful when brothers or sisters around us express confusion about God's plans to attack them as being weak in faith. Instead, we should rally around the person and try to help him through the tunnel to the light at the other side. At the same time, we must realize that we too are weak sometimes. When we face those moments, we should get help. Like Asaph, prayer is a good first step. It doesn't help to try to deny the feelings you are having. Instead, you should seek to have these resolved in a correct way. True believers will not lose faith completely in the end. Asaph came close to stumbling, and his feet almost slipped. While he was tempted, he did not completely fall away to the point of no return. If a person allows his doubts to completely overcome him and drive him away from the Lord, and he doesn't come back, he was not a believer to begin with. 3. Asaph realized the wicked prospered, and he wanted that same success. Here in a nutshell is the struggle which Asaph faced. Wicked people around him were successful, perhaps even because of their wickedness. They were prosperous and became rich. Their lives were easy and smooth. Seeing them seemingly escape justice and be rewarded for their sins made Asaph jealous in that a part of him wanted to the same easy life which they had. It is not shocking that a real believer would give in to moments of temptation about this. Imagine a believer in a Muslim country in the Middle East. He is caught and thrown into prison, where he is daily tortured. Meanwhile, he sees others renounce the faith and be rewarded with posh lives and rewards for ratting out other believers. The temptation to turn away from God and reap the riches would be strong. Application. All of us face temptation. Yet we would do well to remember 1 Corinthians 10:13, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man." God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain, violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness, they have more than heart could wish. They are corrupt, and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. 10 Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. 11 And they say, How doth God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? 12 Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Verily I have cleansed my heart in vain, and washed my hands in innocency. 14 For all the day long have I been plagued, and chastened every morning. 15 If I say, I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. Discussion questions. N1. What observations does Asaph make about the wicked successes? 2. In what ways were they successful? 3. How did they seem to prosper? Were these observations about wicked people accurate? Do you see examples of this today? Cax. Why is this hard for many believers to understand? 6. What observations does Asaph make about the character of the wicked? 7. How does he compare his own situation to theirs, verses 13 to 14? What does verse 15 mean? One, Asaph observed the wicked leading smooth and easy lives. Asaph describes in great detail the luxurious lives of the wicked. They were fat because they always have plenty to eat. That may not seem like a such big deal now when food is much more readily available than it was in those days. But in those days, there were not many fat people. And fatness was generally a sign of wealth, a person who could afford to eat whatever they wanted. Asaph even says that their eye bulges from fatness. What a vivid description. Their lives were smooth and easy. They didn't encounter many trials or difficulties like others did. Everything seemed to bounce their way, and they jumped from one success to another. Asaph says in verse 7 that the imaginations of their heart run riot. In other words, they get whatever they want. All of their hopes, dreams, and fantasies seem to come true. In verse 10, he says that they have waters of abundance, and even their deaths are relatively painless, verse 4. Was it really like this, or was Asaph imagining things? It is probably a combination of both. Immoral people sometimes do prosper more in the short term. Their sinful ethics allow them to extort others or cheat or lie in order to get material gain. Oftentimes, this type of behavior does result in worldly wealth. At the same time, it is easy to see things in a way that reinforce what we already expect to see. If Asaph was struggling inside, he may have been prejudiced, and this bias would tend to warp what he saw, magnifying the easy life of the wicked and the difficulties of the righteous. We too may look at others and think, you have it so easy all the time, when in fact we may just be ignoring things in their life which are not easy. 2. The wicked sinned again and again with seeming impunity. The sins of the wicked were evident. It wasn't as if they merely appeared righteous. They weren't righteous, and everybody knew it. Asaph talks about their pride, violence, mockery, arrogance, rebellion, and evil words. Perhaps the worst of their sins is recorded in verse 9. They have set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue parades through the earth. Verbally, they mock God and speak out against him. Without any fear of God or his divine judgment, their arrogance grows. And even though they so openly laugh at God, yet they still grew more and more prosperous. 3. We also see many things which seem unfair and unjust today. We can see the same thing happening today. Around the world, fear of God is decreasing. People are more and more confident to speak out horrible things against God. And at least in the short term, they still seem to be successful. Richard Dawkins, for example, has said some exceedingly arrogant and evil things against God. I will not quote all because I dare not even type out everything he said, but one of the least offensive in his quote is that God is a capriciously malevolent bully and a homophobic racist. His net worth is probably at least $10 million. Asaph saw many like Richard Dawkins spouting off with their mouth and only raking in more money. A lot of wicked people are successful. We can see examples all around of us of people who defy God and yet are wealthy. 4. Asaph felt that he did what was right for nothing. See verse 13. Asaph says, Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure and washed my hands in innocence. What would you say to Asaph if he were here now? Asaph, at least for the moment, was focusing on material wealth and prosperity, which does not satisfy. He was thinking in lines of what he could get from his actions. As Timothy 6:8 says that godliness with contentment is great gain. One time someone asked me, if I believe in Jesus, what do I get? He was wondering if following Jesus would help him get a better job, or make more money, or become rich. This is the same trap that the false teachers in the previous verses were falling into. Many people look at religion as a means of gaining wealth. Paul says that in fact, being godly does result in great gain, but that gain is not material. So what does someone who is godly gain? Write down whatever you can think of. Good friends, Proverbs 27:17, joy, John 15:11, peace, John 14:27, forgiveness, John 1:12, eternal life, Matthew 25:46, victory, Romans 8:37, security, Proverbs 10:24, a clear conscience, Hebrews 13:18. Money and materials do not bring contentment or happiness. These come from a proper relationship with God, nothing else. Any time a person tries to shortcut or find their own way to happiness, it won't work. 5. He rebuked himself and wouldn't speak his concerns out loud. When Asaph felt like this, he kept it to himself. In verse 15-16, we see that he restrained himself from mentioning his doubts out loud. He was afraid that his weak faith would affect other believers and even mislead the next generation. Asaph was a descendant of Gershom of the tribe of Levi. He is one of 3 who was commissioned by David to be in charge of the singing to worship the Lord. In other words, he was a worship leader. He knew as worship leader he had a lot of influence, and he didn't want to use that influence in the wrong way. There is a time and a place to express doubts. Asaph practiced self-control, and he would go to the right place to deal with his feelings, namely, to the Lord. So when I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. 17, until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end. 18, surely thou didst set them in slippery places, thou castedst them down into destruction. 19, how are they brought into desolation, as in a moment, they are utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awaketh. So, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. 21, thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. 20, so foolish was I and ignorant, I was as a beast before thee. Discussion questions. 1. How did Asaph feel as he thought about this question? 16. 2. Where did he find the answer? 3. What lesson do we learn from this about where to search for answers to life's tough questions? What answer did he discover to this problem? What will finally happen to the wicked? When will this happen? 6. Who will cause it to happen? 7. What do these verses teach us about God's character? 8. How do we see Asaph's attitude changing in verse 22? 9. How do we see prayer changing his feelings and attitude as you go through this chapter? 10. How does prayer change us? One. Asaph searched for answers by coming to the Lord. See verse 17. Until I came into the sanctuary of God. Asaph didn't haphazardly toss his feelings everywhere. He went to the sanctuary, perhaps the temple or a place of worship or meditation. There he took his feelings directly to God. Application. We learn an important lesson here. It is normal to have times of doubt, but the way in which we deal with that doubt is very important. Take your feelings to God. He knows how you feel anyway. Be honest with yourself and with God about the struggles you are facing. Like Habakkuk did before, when we take our questions to God, we can find answers and calm assurance in God's ultimate goodness. 2. He realized that the wicked would face final judgment and destruction for their sin. The answer Asaph received was simple. In verse 17 he says, Then I perceived their end. He goes on to say, You set them in slippery places, you cast them down to destruction. They are destroyed in a moment, utterly swept away by sudden terrors, like a dream when one awakens. Eventually, sooner or later, the wicked will receive justice for the wrongs they have done. They will not take their riches with them after death. One day, each person will face God as the judge and have to give an account for everything he has done. The security that their riches seem to provide is short-lived and no real security at all. While their lives seem to be smooth and easy, destruction comes upon them in a moment. Asaph's description reminds us of Jesus' parable about the rich fool, who did not know that he was about to die, and all of the things so carefully stored up would avail him nothing. Money is but for a moment. A life built on things of this world is on a slippery slope. Only a life built on the rock of Christ is safe and sound. 3. Asaph confesses his wrong attitude in responding to this situation, verses 21 to 22. When my heart was embittered and I was pierced within, then I was senseless and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. Here Asaph confesses his ignorant attitude. He admits that his feelings got the best of him. He allowed his jealousy of the easy lives of the rich to cloud his thinking, and he started raving like a beast without knowledge or understanding. In his frustration, he allowed his mind to get carried away, and his thoughts did not glorify God. However, he still did take these to the Lord and received an answer. Finally, he repented. Application. All of us may sometimes be like Asaph. At times we may allow our frustrations to warp our attitudes even to the point of speaking out or thinking things against God's plan, in some ways challenging His goodness or justice. If we ever realize that we have gone over the line, we need to immediately repent. Job is another example of this. In his frustration at the problems he was facing, he said things which wrongly impugned God's character. So 23. Nevertheless I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. 25. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside thee. 26. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever. 27. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go a-whoring from thee. 28. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord God, that I may declare all thy works. Discussion questions. 1. What resolution does Asaph make? 2. What lessons has he learned about God? 3. Have you reached the point where you can honestly say what Asaph said in verse 25? There is nothing on earth that I desire besides you? 4. What is the final result for the wicked? 5. What is the final result for the righteous? 6. What applications can you make from what you have learned in this chapter? One, Asaph resolves to commit himself to the Lord. In verses 23-24, Asaph recommits himself to the Lord. He has examined both sides of the case. He knows that wickedness may come with certain short-term benefits, but in the end, the godly are the ones who will be rewarded. Therefore, he once again resolves to throw in his lot with God. Instead of abandoning his faith and following after the world, Asaph's faith crises ends up leading him to an even closer relationship with God. Application. There are times in our Christian life when we need to come back to God and make new commitments. Recommitting ourselves to Him and telling Him this in our prayers from time to time is very important. 2. He acknowledges that God is always with him, and he will one day be rewarded. Verse 23. You have taken hold of my right hand. Verse 24. With your counsel you will guide me. Verse 24. Afterward you will receive me to glory. Verse 28. As for me, the nearness of God is my good. In short, Asaph says that God is enough for him. God is the best and to be cherished higher than anything or anyone else. A relationship with Him is to be desired above all else. Application. We should echo the thoughts in the song More Precious Than Silver. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares with you. 3. The wicked will perish in the end. Verse 27. Those who are far from you will perish. Application. Do not be jealous of the wicked, their lives, or what they own. They and all they own will perish in the end. We want to help you study the Bible, obey the Bible, and teach the Bible to others. Thank you for joining us today as we explored the message of Psalm of Asaph, wrestling with the prosperity of the wicked. May this psalm serve as a reminder to anchor our trust in God, even in the face of life's injustices. Join us next time as we continue to uncover the profound wisdom within the timeless scriptures. Take care, and God bless.